December board meeting of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. Thank you for being
Recording
here.
in progress.
Ironic thing for me to say. Earlier today, the Governance Board Committee met and recommended the full board approve various BFSA policies, procedures, and annual reports. Additionally, the Audit, Finance, and Budget Committee met earlier and has recommended the full board approve the annual audited financial statements as presented to the committee by representatives of Lumpson and McCormick, and also to approve the 2022 annual report. Our agenda today includes the review of one proposed labor agreement negotiated between the operating engineers and the Buffalo Urban Development Corporation in Local 815. We are joined today by the Executive Director and Deputy Executive Director of the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority to discuss BMHA matters. I would like to bring to your attention 3 items. The first is the annual certification regarding your compliance with the Code of Ethics. It was provided with your August meeting materials. Please sign this item and return it to any of the BFSA staff, and if you require another copy, please let staff know. Second item is the board self-evaluation. The evaluation form was previously provided, and I ask that you complete and mail it anonymously to BFSA staff, who will compile the results, representing to the Governance Committee at the December meeting. The last item is the proposed calendar of BFSA meetings for calendar year 2023. And has been provided to you as an additional document in your board book. Please review the proposed schedule and inform Jeanette of any scheduling conflicts you are aware of. A revised calendar will be distributed by email as needed. The final schedule of meetings will be brought to the full board for a vote at the December board meeting. We will open the meeting to public comment on any matter discussed today at the conclusion of the meeting. We will begin today's meeting with Secretary Flores taking a roll of the directors.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair Olson.
Here.
Vice Chair Jurcek is excused. Director Sanfilippo.
Here.
Here. Secretary Floss is here. Mayor Brown.
Present.
Present. County Executive Poloncarz.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thanks, Fred.
Chairman.
Our first item of business is to approve the minutes from the meeting held on June 22nd and July 19th. Directors will find a draft of those minutes and the accompanying draft resolution in your board book under tab 3.
So moved.
Second. Is there any questions, deletions, additions? Hearing none, all in favor of approval, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next item is to consider the recommendation by the Audit, Finance, and Budget Committee to approve both the 2022 audit financial statements and the 2022 annual report. At the Audit, Finance, and Budget Committee meeting, the audit partner discussed in detail the results of the 2021 audit and the draft financial statements. An unmodified audit opinion or a clear audit opinion has been provided on the financial statements. Draft of the financial statements were provided in your board books under tab 2. Ms. Dayton is present to answer any questions you have related to the audit. Are there any questions for Ms. Dayton? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to thank the staff, given COVID and everything else that they've gone through, that they did a great job of putting all of this together and getting it to us in a timely fashion.
I would certainly second that. In addition, the Audit, Finance, and Budget Committee reviewed the BFSA's 2022 annual report and has recommended the board approve this item in substantially its final form, with authority being delegated to the chair, interim vice chair, executive director, and controller to make any changes necessary for its accurate completion. The draft annual report has been provided under tab 2. The BFSA is required to file both of these items with the New York State Controller's Office. Additionally, these items will be submitted to various New York State officials and local officials and will also be posted on the BFSA website. Any questions on these items can now be addressed to Jeanette. Okay, hearing none. accompanying draft resolution for approval of both these items has been provided to you under tab 4. May I have a motion to receive, accept, and approve the independent audit and the annual report as presented in substantially its final form? Any second?
Second.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dayton, for meeting with us today, and also to your team for all the hard work that went into this audit. We appreciate your continuing excellent service. Governance Committee met earlier today and is recommending the full board approve various guidelines, policies, and reports. We're being asked to ratify the committee's decision. I would like to take them all in one action. The policies and guidelines have been provided under tab 1, with the various draft resolutions provided separately under tab 4. These policies and reports are listed on the agenda and include the bylaws, the code of ethics, the mission statement, the investment guidelines, property disposal guidelines, use of discretionary funds policy, whistleblower policy, lobbying policy, procurement guidelines, procurement report, prompt payment policy, prompt payment report, and conflicts of interest policy. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution addressing these items in one action?
So moved.
Second. Any question or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. I'm going to reorder the agenda to take the resolution honoring District CFO Jeff Pritchard next. The draft resolution is provided under tab 7. I will read excerpts of this resolution. Whereas Mr. Jeffrey F. Pritchard was appointed Chief Financial Officer of the district on March 3rd, 2015, and whereas Mr. Pritchard has been responsible for the development of 8 annual budgets and accompanying 4-year financial plans during his tenure at the district, and whereas Mr. Pritchard providing outstanding leadership to the district during the enormous upheaval in public education resulting from the coronavirus pandemic, and whereas Mr. Pritchard has worked diligently with the BFSA to develop a collaborative approach in addressing the financial challenges facing the district, and has represented the district at BFSA board meetings, and whereas Mr. Pritchard's contributions to the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority, the Buffalo School District, and the community of Buffalo will endure and positively impact future generations. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority does hereby honor and appreciate Mr. Jeffrey F. Pritchard for his outstanding contributions while serving the Buffalo City School District. We will now move to our next agenda item, which is a discussion with BMHA officials. Gillian Brown, Executive Director, and Modesto Candelario, Deputy Executive Director.
Mr. Chair, can we vote on the resolution before we go forward?
Thank you, Fred.
Congratulate Mr. Pritchard appropriately.
Yes, I have to say that this sharing doesn't work perfectly.
No.
Okay. All in favor of approving the resolution honoring Mr. Pritchard?
Aye.
Aye. Is there a motion to approve? I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye. Aye.
Chair Olson, if I could,
Yes, please.
if I could interject, could we move the agenda to the operating engineers review under tab 7?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, our final item of business is a review of the collective bargaining agreement between the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency and Local 815. In connection with this labor contract, we received a submission of a modified financial plan, which will be also addressed. The BFSA staff analysis and report on these items is provided under tab 8, along with the mayor's submission of the modified financial plan. Bryce, would you please review these items?
Nathan, would you please review operating engineers? Thank you.
Good afternoon. The following is the BFSA staff analysis of the successful agreement between the district and the operating engineers, represented by International Union of Operating Engineers Local 401. So firstly, we wanted to take a look at what the actual custodial system is and how it functions. And it's termed an indirect custodial system. The district employs operating engineers. Operating engineers receive what are called CECs, or custodial engineer contracts, per facility. And they're employees of the district, but they also receive contract funds to perform those contracts at the facilities. Now they in turn hire their own custodial engineers who do the work if they decide not to do the work themselves. So it's a mixture of the operating engineer doing the work and their employees at each of these schools. It's a very old system. It goes back before there was an IRS, federal income tax. It predates 1860, and so it's quite unique. We talk about the current agreement that's in place expired a little while back. It was reviewed and approved by BFSA back in 2007. It expired on June 30th, 2010. This new successor agreement goes from July 1st, 2010, all the way up through June 30th, 2026. It's a 16-year period in all from when it expired, from the previous contract expired up to when this proposed agreement would cover. So here's some of the changes to the current system. As I said, it's an indirect system. They're going to be transitioning into both an indirect and a direct system, and I'll explain that a little bit. They said they hire their own custodial engineers. However, commencing July 1st, 2024, operating engineers hired prior to July 1st, 2023, who participate within the indirect system shall hold only one custodial engineering contract. And that means for each operating engineers, right now they have multiple contracts, so it could be like school 1, school 2, school 3. Beginning of that day, they can only have one school contract. The schools that don't have an operating engineer as part of the indirect system, which they will be able to have direct engineers. And so there's the sub-point here is that the indirect engineers holding more than one school maintenance contract at January 1st, 2024 notify the district in writing by April 30th. The custodial engineers, their employees, that they elect to release as of the end of that fiscal year, those employees may in turn be hired directly by the school districts. They're not laid off. They are transitioning, if they so choose to, into the new system, the direct system. If notice is not given by the engineer, the district gets to choose the custodial engineers to be removed by April 30th. If they haven't heard from them who they elect, then the district has the authority to go ahead and choose those individuals. Yes.
On these choices, is there a seniority system, or is there any way of ensuring that these choices are going to be made fairly?
So the operating engineers, if they hold more than one school contract, it's their option which ones they want to keep and which ones they don't. They'll have to make that choice at that point. The schools that they choose no longer to have a contract with will not. So it's not seniority based. It's based on the operating engineer's decision.
How will the additional, so somebody has 5 contracts, how will the other 4 contracts be billed?
They can then become part of a direct system, and I'll show that in a second here. Beginning in July 1st, 2024, any school without an indirect engineer, or an indirect engineer doesn't have that contract, the obligations to perform that can either go to a direct system, where the district hires what's called a direct operating engineer, or they'll have the option of subcontracting out the custodial engineers for that. So you have a direct engineer with district custodial employees versus operating engineer employees, or subcontract to a company at the district's discretion.
So is there any protection for those that were working in a school, let's say, for the last 10 or 15 years indirectly, that they would first shot at getting the contract, or is it solely at the discretion of the administration of that school?
So let me be clear, you're referring to the operating engineers or to the custodial engineers? Okay, so the operating engineers are district employees, custodial engineers are not. At that point, they can be hired directly by the school district. Right. The protections are that the operating engineers they've agreed to the terms and they'll transition to this new system. The ones that are in place now, that are hired now, are legacy then. So they'll continue to be indirect and can maintain the current system. All the new hires will be direct ones. I don't know if I answered that with the custodial engineers.
That's good. That's fine.
Good.
We can talk about it later.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Oh, we still have a few more slides.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So some of the terms of the way that the system changes, both the district and the union agree to establish a transition committee to discuss the implementation of this new system. Any custodial engineer member hired after July 1st, 2023 shall be permitted to participate in the indirect system unless the district and the operating engineers mutually agree to extend that date. And then finally, as of January 1st, 2023, the district has the ability to subcontract custodial engineer inspection work at schools that, where a CEC is not held. So associated with the contract are a series of compensation increases. The first of which is a one-time signing bonus. The first signing bonus goes to the operating engineers at $6,000. It's for all of the full-time current members, right, irrespective of service dates. There's also a one-time signing bonus that the district pays to the custodial engineers. It's solely for the full-time engineers. It's $1,250. And then there's this custodial bonus. This is a current contractual feature. It's $3,000 to each operating engineer that also maintains a breakfast program. It's increased to $4,000, effective July 1st, 2023. Okay. This is the salary increases just for the operating engineers. I have it broken out so that it shows at ratification, retroactive to the start of the fiscal year, it's 19%. But because it's been expired for such a long length of time, I wanted to show that it's broken out over that time is 1.5% annually. And then the succeeding years there, 4, 4, and 3%. It's a current contractual term we've seen with most unions. They receive longevity payments. The successor agreement updates these. It's increased for all of the various service years. The only group that doesn't is 0 to 5. That's about, I think there's 3 individuals that would not receive this. Almost all would receive an increase longevity payment. And then the final on the bottom here is that there's a new tier. It used to cap out at 29 years at that $1,560. That was increased, but now there's a new tier as well for 30 plus years of district service. Okay, this feeds into the new system, the direct system. The individuals, the operating engineers that will only have one CEC, at that point they'll have what's called the transitional bonus. When they move to only one school CEC, they will receive a bonus of $7,500 for each school that they no longer have a CEC. So if they had 4, they'll go down to 1, and they'll get this transactional bonus for the 3 that they no longer have the CEC for. And the supplemental benefit fund, this is an existing benefit that the district pays for. It's administered by the union. This is for dental and vision. The successor agreement currently provides $500 per custodial engineer that's eligible and for every operating engineer. The successor, that should be the current agreement, provides that the successor agreement puts $25,000 in a lump sum payment into that fund and then increases the per employee and per covered employee amount each year on the bottom. And so, like I said, there was a contract, a CEC for each school facility. And the way that the number for the contract is determined is by square footage of the building and what type of work is being done. So this slide here shows just the contract, the custodial engineer contract increases. You know, for all throughout the whole contract there. So it varies between HVAC systems and you know, lawns, maintenance, common area. Okay. There are some savings associated with the successor agreement. There's changes within both active and retiree health insurance. Currently, active employees, depending on when they were hired, if they were hired prior to February 1st, 2007, they receive health insurance at no cost. If they were hired after that, the current contribution rate is 10%. There's no change for the individuals that were hired before 2/1/07. However, those hired after will have an increase from 10 to 15% of the premium equivalent rate.
I'm assuming that's individual coverage
It's for both.
for
It's-
both?
yeah.
Family and, okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
As far as retirees, there's no change for anyone that's currently retired. Individuals who are active now and who retire more than 90 days after the ratification of the successor agreement will be required to enroll in Medicaid Advantage and pay 15% of the premiums cost. Then the final note there is effective July 1st, 2023, any new hire would be ineligible down the road when they would, you know, after they retire. So that would be, you know, presumably like 18 years plus from now, or from then.
If you don't mind, just a clarification for those members that were hired prior to February 1 of 2007 that had contributed 0%, they'll now contribute 10%.
Okay, I didn't
Okay.
see that in the contract.
Just wanted to-
Any other questions for Bryce?
Has this been ratified by the union?
Not yet, but it's on the schedule tonight.
No, it has been ratified by the union.
Oh,
It's
union.
Before our board
It
decision.
should be before the board, but I mean, but the members have ratified or agreed to this.
Yeah, I meant to say the Board of Education meets tonight and it's on the agenda, but yes, the union has ratified it.
In both groups, the operating and the custodial engineers are both.
Custodial engineers do not negotiate with the district, they negotiate with the engineers.
Right.
Right.
But we're locking in rate, I guess that's my concern, we're transitioning to a new system. So I'd just like to sort of put it on the record that as we transition to a new system where particularly you had outside employees essentially that weren't tied to the district directly, that as we move to a closer version of that there's some version of fairness, that individuals, the custodial engineers, are going to be given, you know, a fair shot as we move people around. You would hate to see individuals who may have worked for a school for 10 or 15 years or whatever now sort of not be rehired simply because we decided to change the way the system is working. I mean,
Sure.
I just think that that's something that we should make sure that we consider. And I just want to make, you know, hopefully the school district will take that under advisement.
Any further?
I just have two more points here I want to discuss.
Okay.
Both the net cost of the contract and then how it's funded. The first, real quick, I have it broken out by both general fund and all funds. It's almost entirely general fund, but 98% is what we used to figure it out. The current fiscal year net cost is about 4.3 million, and the 4-year is about 21.3 overall. And that includes all of the increases in the various compensation, the contract cost, the impact on fringes, and then factoring back out some of the savings from the two healthcare pieces. And then funding sources. The district provided material on how the net costs could be addressed. The first of which is grant funding. ARPA funds will be used for the signing bonus and can be used in 23, 24 as well for some of the associated costs. Additionally, there's grant funding now for the program, and the expectation is that over the next 4 years, some of that grant funding could be used for the prospective costs of the contract. Largely, though, it is coming from this reserve contingency for labor contract settlements. This is a reserve contingency within the general fund. It totals, on the screen here, $23.2 million in the current fiscal year, and overall, $131.4 over the 4 years. This slide backs out the 3 contracts that have been settled since the adopted budget was adopted back in May. And so, using BFSA's analysis, we've reduced the amount that would be available for settling the contracts. The 3 contracts bring it down to 19.5 in the current fiscal year, and overall, $92 million over 4 years. And then the bottom line here, as a reminder, all 4 years of the financial plan include operating deficits or deficits, and that's listed in the bottom here. The current fiscal year deficit is $34.6 million. The contracts themselves do not impact that deficit, all of the things being held equal. The amount available within that contingency account is decreased. So there are no budget amendments associated with it. It would be a budget transfer out of that fund into the various other funds. That, I believe, completes my summary. If we can move
I just
along.
have a couple wrap-up comments on it then. So this union is the last long outstanding union contract with the district. So the settlement of this really gets the district over the hump of getting all of those long outstanding union contracts settled. The ratification of this agreement brings the district current with all unions with the exception of one notable exception, the teachers. Next slide. So as Nathan just reviewed the costs of the contract, I won't go over those again with you. Just the costs, they've been funded with the contingency that has been budgeted in the financial plan. Healthcare savings were negotiated. They're relatively minor at $350,000 over the financial plan, or 1.6% of additional contract costs. Likely that'll become more significant, though, as time goes on with all these contracts, and folks are no longer entitled to health insurance at retirement. I just covered that, too. Thank you. Next slide. The funding of the contract costs, Nathan did review also. Significantly, he's been tracking the contingency reserve as these union contracts have been settled. Right now, there's $92 million over the 4-year financial plan that's remaining, estimated. And that would be available for the settlement of the teacher's contract. It's not expected to be sufficient. So in the event that a contract is settled, our expectation is that we would receive a modified financial plan as required under the Act if it would exceed that $92 million, of course. Next slide, just as a reminder, the financial plan was balanced using reserves of $90.3 million. This entire deficit is attributed to including this contingency for settling contracts in their financial plan. It was the first year that they did that. And the final slide is our continued recommendation. It's not necessary, but we are continuing to recommend that the financial plan be updated to reflect all the changes from the settlement of these labor contracts for transparency to any interested party who would want to see what the costs are and how it's affecting the financial plan. And that summarizes it. At this point, Nils, if you want to open up for questions.
Okay, any questions for Jeanette or for Bryce? Okay, hearing none, Bureau officials were requested to discuss 2 items with us, including the intended salary increase structure for exempt employees, merit bonus system included in the labor agreement, and what that process will involve. Scott Billman and Tracy Cooley are present to discuss those items with us. Welcome, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Nils. I'm going to back up on the agenda a little bit, if that's okay. Bear with me for a second. So we're going to go back to where we left off on the agenda, which is for the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority discussion.
BMHA, okay.
That's on page
Okay.
10.
I
Okay.
got it on page. Okay. We'll move to our next agenda item, which is a discussion with BMHA officials. Gillian Brown, Executive Director, and Modesto Candelaria, Deputy Executive Director, are present today. They've been asked to discuss the status, the rent increase requested for Marine Drive, the status of the voucher program requested for Marine Drive.
We requested 246. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and the capital work being conducted to BMHA infrastructure through related entity. Thank you for being here today, and we'll start with a discussion from you on those 3 items.
There. Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well. Thanks for inviting us. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfectly.
Great. So you asked us to come here and discuss the status of the rent increase and the vouchers at Marine Drive. First, I would say the status of the rent increase, if the directors will recall, when we last requested a rent increase at Marine Drive, it is a very, very lengthy process. It goes through a number of different approvals. So right now we are engaged in that process. I have reason to hope that it will be approved by the beginning of the next Marine Drive fiscal year, which would be April 1st of 23. But that is on the if come that it actually wends its way through this difficult process in that period of time. There's numerous forms that need to be filled out, budgets. We've got our staff working on it, and they've been working on it for many weeks now. But as I said at the outset, the last time we requested a rent increase at Marine Drive, the process took something like 2 years. We don't anticipate it taking that long this time because that rent increase was the first rent increase we had requested in many, many years at Marine Drive, and it was all very new to both sides. We're hopeful that it'll be approved by April 1st. As far as the Section 8 vouchers, the project-based vouchers that we requested, we put in a request for 246, 123, or exactly half what we requested were awarded. And we have staff right now that are engaged in the process of going through our ledgers and our tenant accounts and our tenant information, determining which units are occupied by people who would be most eligible for those vouchers. And then we're going to be apportioning out those vouchers soon.
Any questions?
Just one. Given you now starting to do rent increases, do you have, over the next 5 years of financial plan or whatever, any other rent increases that you are thinking so that residents might be able to plan or at least understand, the process that you're thinking of?
Well, at this point, things at Marine Drive, as they are at Perry and Schaefer Village, are somewhat in flux because, as you probably have seen in the media and from us previously, those 3 developments are targeted for massive redevelopment, revitalization projects. So we know that residents at Marine Drive will not be asked or required and are not allowed to pay more than 30% of their income for rent and utilities combined. So while there will be presumably modest increases granted, those rent increases are still going to be limited by the requirement that no one may be asked to pay more than 30%. Going forward, as we redevelop the entire Marine Drive area, the entire development area, there will be different types of housing there. There will be different, some public, some affordable, some mixed income. So that's in flux, and I couldn't tell you whether we're planning for another rent increase request, because my hope is that it will be a very different structure legally in 5 years.
Thank you. Given all of these changes, I know we have been concerned for a while now on the turnover of the units and being able to get as many people into all of these units as quickly as possible. I'm thinking of all of the times that we had Director Arthur talking to everybody about that and trying to make sure that, you know, as much of our housing could be used by those that needed it. Can you give us any sort of update on what your thoughts are as we go through these developments to ensure that we get as many people housing as possible?
Well, the turnover, of course, leads to a discussion of the wait list. And the wait list is actually quite small right now. We are turning over units faster, and our occupancy rate at, I believe, every development is above 90%, including Marine Drive. There are vacancies at Marine Drive in anticipation of future redevelopment and changes. We are leaving some units vacant because we're going to need to do that for on-site relocation. But we have a very small wait list right now on Marine Drive. We are serving quite a few people that were on the wait list previously. So I don't have exact numbers for you. I think that could probably be sent with our next board packet for our October meeting, which is also our annual meeting. And I know Nathan will probably bring back all the facts and figures that we hand out then. But I do know that our occupancy rate has increased and our waiting list has decreased.
Yeah, thank you.
I just have a quick question. Are there any projects underway that the Municipal Housing Authority is working with the Department of Homes and Community Renewal from Albany or New York?
We're working very closely with HCR on the Marine Drive project. And of course, these Section 8, these project-based vouchers came through, the application process came through HCR as well.
Okay, so in other words, are they issuing, how much is this, I'm assuming it's a remodel or whatever, a reconstruction. How much money is being advanced or debt being issued to finance this improvement by them?
So, Director, we issued an RFQ 2 years ago for developer partners to assist in the redevelopment of all three of those, our largest family developments other than Kentfield Langfield. And we have a different developer on board for each of those three. So there's one assigned, one working with us on Perry, one on Marine Drive, one on Schaefer. It's obviously, you know, when you do a redevelopment project on this kind of a scope, that's 616 units at Marine Drive. It's going to be a complicated financing plan. It's going to be a mix of various different financing resources. There's going to be contributions from the state. There's going to be contributions from the federal government, obviously, that are significant in terms of the RAD program, in terms of tax credits. So it's not that there is, I wish there was, but there is no single entity simply advancing us any cash to do anything.
Is there anything you need me to do to discuss with Ruth Ann Visnaskis that you may need help with?
So we have been meeting with Lenny Skrill. We have meetings set up with. We had actually just recently a meeting set up with Commissioner Visnauskas, and she unfortunately was unable to come to town that day. But in reality, anything you could do to just turn the entire state upside down and shake it until money comes out of its pockets is fine with us.
Well, listen, don't hesitate to reach out to me, you and Mo, to assist in any way I can, because I serve on the Municipal Bond Bank Agency Board, and I meet with them regularly as part of that agency. So, like I said, I'm here to help you guys out at whatever you need it.
This is Modesto speaking. At the moment, we are really completing the concept plans, the unit configuration, replacement plan. So we're still working on the finances of all these massive transactions. So as we get closer to understanding where the gaps are, we can then share that and ask for all the advocates to help us secure some resources for these transactions.
Well, I just want you to know I'm here to help you guys.
We appreciate that. Thanks. We are really thrilled, to be honest, with the cooperation that we've gotten from all the different partners and agencies and advocates, because I think everybody knows, frankly, that all three of these are projects whose time has come, and it's really important to address Perry. It's really important to address those vacant, boarded buildings that everybody sees from the 190. It's really important to bring Marine Drive into the fabric and into the fold of an otherwise completely transformed waterfront. And it's really important to deal with Schaefer Village, which is a very isolated sort of island in northwest Buffalo that really needs to be woven back into the community in a better way. So we're going to be looking to help from anyone and everyone that can assist us.
Great.
Anything further? I'd like to congratulate you. You're doing a very good job, Gillian. Things are looking up. Finally.
I think we're making a lot of progress. I'm certainly not making progress on my own, but I think Modesto and I and the rest of the team here are working really, really hard to just sort of, we really want to do some transformative things. Business as usual obviously lasted for about 40 years, and it just wasn't cutting it. So we are really trying hard to focus on things that will be transformative and big, not just for us, but for the whole city.
Well, it's a remarkably ambitious goal, and one that certainly has been wanting for a long time. So I know George would be very pleased to hear about the progress and beginning to address.
I would hope.
Yeah, I'm sure he would. Although I'm sure he'd also
he was
have
a tough
comments
parent to me, but I would hope he'd be pleased.
I think he'd be very pleased.
I appreciate it. If there are no other questions, I'll let you get on with the rest of your day. I will.
Sure. Say hi to Lenny for me.
We'll see you all. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, Chair
Okay,
Olson.
Jeanette, where am I?
We're picking up on the top of page 12. And if you prefer me to
Okay.
pick up for you, I can do that.
No, I can do it.
Okay.
Our final items of business today is the review, the collective bargaining agreement between the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency and Local 815. In connection with this labor contract, we received a submission and a modified financial plan, which will also be discussed. The BFSA staff analysis and report on these items is provided under tab 8 along with the mayor's submission of the modified financial plan. Bryce, would you please review these items?
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. To address the board today. I'll be reviewing the MOA between BURA and CST Local 1000, Local 815. A little background on this unit. Currently, there were let me take a step back. Under the adopted budget, there were 29 budgeted positions, which included over 15 titles. As of September 1, 2022, there were 21 filled positions with a current average salary of roughly $56,700. Vacancy rate at that time for 8 positions was 27.6%. Bureau is looking at filling those positions. Employees are funded through a combination of operating fund, or through the operating fund by multiple revenue sources, including the federal entitlement grants, local program income, and other local revenues and grants. The MOA was ratified by membership on July 18th, 22, with a vote of 14-1, and it was tentatively approved by the Bureau Board of Directors on August 4th, 2022. Previous CBA expired June 30th, 2022. We reviewed it at the February BFSA meeting. That was a short 2-year contract to really bring the employees up through the end of fiscal year June 30th, 22. Current CBA will cover the period of July 1, 2022 through June 30, 2026. So it covers all 4 years of the current 2023-2026 financial plan. It's noted that similar health insurance benefits are also extended to appointed exempt employees per Bureau Board of Directors. Per the adopted financial plan, there were 12 positions budgeted, and there were 8 filled as of September 1st. The current average salary for the exempts was $74,800. Any salary increases, including longevity payments, are effective back to July 1, 2022. The wage agreement includes a 2% annual increase as of July 1, 2022, and then a series of 3% salary increases on July 1, 23, July 1, 24, and July 1, 25. Over the 4 years of the financial plan, the increase total 11.5%. The bonus pay system, there's 2 pieces to it. In the current year, fiscal year 22-23, it's a one-time bonus based on time of service, similar to the bonus that they received last year. So that's, as I said, it's just based on years of service, or actually months of service, and the bonus is calculated. There is a schedule in the material that has the breakout of the time and what the bonus is. Going forward, there's going to be a new bonus system structured on a performance evaluation, and that's a combination of years of service and the employee's final grade on the evaluation. And that bonus goes into effect, that bonus system, the performance evaluation, goes into effect July 1, 23. Now, in regards to the exempts, the material I'm presenting on here was what was originally communicated to BFSA with the mayor's letter. So there's an annual salary increase of $2,000 to $5,000 per exempt employee in the current year. Future increases will be based on the performance evaluation and range between $1,200 to $3,000 annually. Exempts do not receive steps, so there are none, and their one-time bonus in the current fiscal year 22-23 is based on time of service, similar to the covered employees. Now, there are 2 employees or in titles that are going to deviate from what the basic exempt employee package is, and those are the Director of Operations, and let me take a step back. Director of Programming and Director of Admin. Both of those positions are going to be increased to a flat salary of $115,000 each. So it's almost, consider it 2 silos, one programmatic and one administrative, and that's how, those are the 2 positions outside of the other exempts that will be receiving increases. This is the one-time bonus based on terms of service that I mentioned previously, ranging from $1,000 for 6 to 24 months of service up to $3,500 based on over 240 months of service. Now, this bonus structure will only be used in the current fiscal year. The next slide here is the employee performance-based bonus plan. So as you can see across the top, going left to right, number of years of service, 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 plus years. and then the degree of the performance evaluation, unsatisfactory, satisfactory, above average, and excellent.
Right.
Yes,
Who does the performance evaluation?
that would be the management team at Bureau, several exempts.
And, one other thing before, I'm sorry to interrupt, but, I'm not the best at math, but how did you guys arrive at 11.5% for total increase over 4 years?
That was compounding. So you have
Okay.
the 2% and then the 3 threes.
Okay, compounded,
Yep.
okay. Apologize for that.
Yep.
Can I ask a question while we've got you stopped? Is you get an unsatisfactory review and we're going to give you money? Normally you would get fired.
Well, they're probably-
It's such a different process that I
Okay.
asked borough representatives to talk more about this once he's done with his comments, so.
Okay, no problem.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's
Thank you.
very different.
And
Fred, you hardly sound like a public employee.
I know.
and this system
Oh, he sounds like management.
is intended to replace
Doesn't work that way in Buff State.
the new performance evaluation system is intended to replace the annual longevity payment, and I'll get into a little more detail on that momentarily. Instead of receiving a longevity payment annually, employees will only receive it on the 5th, 10th, every 5 years. So this is an addition to it, and we'll let the if individuals from Bureau to discuss this momentarily. Health insurance, the significant change there is going to be towards retiree health insurance. Currently, the way it's structured is that retirees will pay the portion that they have during active service. So currently it would be either 20 or 25% plus a percentage of Bureau's contribution. No longer is it based on the employee's contribution percentage. That 20-25% is now just up to 30%. It doesn't matter if it's single or family. The employee's contribution in retirement is equal to that 30% plus the portion that Bureau would pay, the percentage there. As I mentioned, there's addition to longevity. There's additions for years 30 and 35 to longevity schedule. Longevity replaces annual the annual performance-based bonus replaces longevity, and longevity is only awarded every 5 years. In addition to auto allowance, there are 3 positions that receive daily stipends when they use their vehicle. All their employees receive the IRS calculated rate, except there are 2 positions that are going to receive a quarterly stipend of $375 per quarter for use of their vehicle. Next couple slides are a breakout of the active employee contributions. There were no changes to the actual health insurance, so I'm just going to go through these rather quickly to get to us to the breakout on the retiree. So you'll see where it says post 7/18/2022, you'll see the increase to the prior column to the left. So it's going from, for family coverage, 20 plus years of service, it's going from 60% contribution to 65%, single coverage 62.5 up to 65, and it's carried down for those that have been employed with Bureau between 15 and 20 years. So as I said, the minimum employee contribution is 30% plus a percent of the Bureau contribution is required by the employee, or the retiree in this case. Upon becoming eligible for Medicare, retirees will be required to enroll in Medicare Part A and B and pay for Medicare B. However, there is no requirement to make Medicare the primary insurance. Now, this is the cost breakout over the 4 years of the financial plan. Totals approximately $1.5 million over the 4 years. The salaries blended, including both exempts and covered employees. We've included the retirement incentive and the performance bonus across the time. Bureau identified resources within the financial plan, as well as provided a modified, revised financial plan to acknowledge additional entitlement funds being received from the federal government. So there's the elimination of a position for approximately $222,000, and corresponding fringe benefits of $111,000, increased home resources of over $210,000 over the 4 years. Bureau is unique compared to several other government agencies in that they have a rollover of unused admin dollars. So if they don't use it in a current year, they can roll it forward as long as they remain within their cap limits. Bureau has demonstrated that with these increases, they're still within their cap limits. And then there was over $200,000 included in the financial plan. So Bureau has identified close to $1 million in available resources with a difference of roughly $550,000. Current year costs have been adequately budgeted for. Prospective costs were included in the financial plan. And I'm jumping ahead a little there. The MOA provides a 4-year contract which expires at the end of the current financial plan, June 30th, 2026. So this MOA really allows Bureau to have an idea of where their administrative employee costs are going to be for the next 4 years. Additional items for Bureau to consider in future negotiations. Consider utilizing an outside labor negotiation team. Require Medicare B to be primary insurance in future negotiations. Future MOA should include the appropriate health insurance contributions for those hired prior to July 1, 2000, as the current CBA is silent on those employees. And then Bureau management should put together a single comprehensive document reflecting all the MOAs to date. Next slide we have here is actually the financial plan modification, which was approved by the Bureau Board of Directors on August 4th. The financial plan modification was to recognize the increase in entitlement dollars from HUD. In total, it's the Home Investment Partnership Program, so you'll see an increase of $514,000 in the current year, an estimated increase by roughly $10,000 in each year going forward, with years 3 and 4 being held flat. With the increase in revenue, there's corresponding increases on expenditures, as you'll see below. Under expenditures, you have an increase both for program costs as well as the admin costs. So it balances out. Revenues increase, corresponding expenditure increases across the financial plan. I went through that rather quickly.
Okay, Nils, he's finished with his presentation. If you want
Okay,
to move forward to open the questions.
Any other questions? Any questions for Bryce? Okay, thank you, Bryce. Bureau officials were requested to discuss 2 items with us, including the intended salary increase structure for exempt employees and the merit-based system included in the labor agreement and what that process will involve. Scott Billman and Tracy Cooley have been patiently waiting to discuss these items with us. Welcome, and please feel free to start.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Billman. I'm General Counsel for the agency, slowly transitioning to Senior Director of Admin for the agency, and I appreciate your time today. And I'll take the performance review structure first. We first rolled this across the table in CBA negotiations in the prior CBA, in that short 2-year agreement that we signed that just ended in June. And then we came back to the table with it again on this CBA. And the intention was to build in incentivize performance into a union set, which we think is quite unique and is worth negotiating to see, maybe as a pilot, whether or not this can work in a setting such as Bureau. So the structure of the performance bonuses is 2-tier, based on the score in the performance review, and it's based on years of service. And that was part of the negotiation. You have to realize that this is in lieu of automatic increments, which the bargaining union does not get. And no longer will they get an annual longevity payment. So despite performance, if reviews or not, in the past, based on your years of service, you could get an annual payment. Now that's only on 5-year anniversaries. Part of the negotiation was, what is that range of bonus, right? How is it connected? They wanted to connect it to some sort of terms of service, which makes sense. But because that annual longevity was being given up and no automatic increment was given, we did have to compromise. And even on the lowest score, there is a minimum amount given. The other thing to point out is that in a 4-year agreement, we're giving ourselves 1 year, full year, to work with our outside HR consultant, train up our managers on the right way to do reviews, firm up the process through labor management, and then, beginning in year 2, start the performance review process. And we think that that's the best way of doing it because it's such a novel approach for an entity such as ours. We want to make sure that we are crystal clear through labor management that this is the process, educate the staff, educate the managers that are doing the reviews, and then go forward for year 2, 3, and 4. Now, the exempts, we've had a lot of internal discussions about how to handle the exempts. And what we want to make sure we do, because we have a contractual obligation under this new CBA to put the performance reviews in place for the union, is make sure that that process is finalized and ready to go for year 2. We fully intend to look at all of the different options of doing performance reviews on the exempts themselves. We have about 7 or 8. However, we want to make sure that the process is ready to go on the union side. And when that is set up, then we'll look at different options for the exempts. We think it's wholly reasonable to have some sort of performance review, but we want to make sure that we button up on the CBA side first, and then turn our attention. I think Tracy can walk through how we've built that or baked that into our budget. But that's really the way that we've approached it. We think it's a real sea change approach to management and staff, and building in some potential for professional development, setting targets for staff at the beginning of the performance review, and giving them updates throughout the performance year, and giving them input, which we've heard feedback that's really on the union side. They want feedback from management, and then incentivizing the entire process with the bonus.
Does an employee?
And I'm happy to answer any further.
I'm sorry.
Is there an appeals process for an unsatisfactory review?
The language of the CBA puts the performance reviews wholly on the discretion of management.
Which is probably why it's appropriate to have some longevity, because you have a subjective process.
Yes.
With a good deal of mistrust sometimes between union and management.
Yes.
And that traditionally, at least, these longevity reviews, which people might find curious in light of to justify a pay increase for an unsatisfactory performance. I would suspect that might be one of the legitimate concerns the union had. I know that carries over to the educational side as well.
Absolutely. It was part of the negotiating. A union taking up a bonus performance review structure for the first time, and the concern, I'm sure, on the bargaining unit side, that they were bargaining away any firm additions to their base salary. There's longevity in the automatic.
Okay, now, I didn't catch all of it, the response, but if an employee has a tendency to argue the unsatisfactory performance, what is the process for the employee to go against, or at least argue that maybe the performance evaluation was unfair?
Well, currently the language of the CBA puts it solely in the discretion of management. But the way it's structured right now, I would think that the proper avenue that employee would go to would be through labor management, which is where we've handled similar situations like this before.
Are you, in this new process and the way that you're thinking about this, is there going to be a performance program before the individual starts the year, whatever your period is, to do this, that both management and the employee would agree to, and that would then be the basis for the evaluation on whatever recommendation is made? Is that what you're thinking? Because you're saying sole discretion. I would be afraid that if it's, I don't talk to you and I just decide you're unsatisfactory,
Right.
that's not a very good labor management technique.
Right. No, and that's why we gave ourselves that year, that first year. What we want to do is make sure at the beginning of the review year, the employee understands goals of the year, of the coming year, and can exchange, have dialogue with management before that performance year starts. Yeah, it doesn't do us any good if we don't have set some goals or deliverables for those employees until halfway through the performance year. Yeah, we need to have that in place at the beginning so everyone is on the same page. And I think that also will make it a lot easier if we have any issues to handle those through labor management. And that's the other thing, through this whole process, we are on the same page with the union that, you know, this is going to be a learning process for the first year. Labor management is going to be very important on this, so we iron out any of the bumps or obstacles so that we're ready to go forward in year two.
Okay, just to follow up a little bit. Okay, so if someone wants to argue their performance, there isn't any other independent body that they could appeal to? And number two, how would you safeguard against management from having a personal vendetta against a particular employee?
But to answer your first question, there is no appeal process for the review. It's in management discretion. To the second, we're going to take some time on that. We think it's going to definitely need to be more than one reviewer. There's going to be baselines that we're going to have to establish with management. So that doesn't happen. Or at the opposite, that management doesn't play favorites, which is also something we have to be wary of. And we know that this is going to take some training on the management side to button up how this works, so it's not challengeable, or it's not obviously challengeable, and we can make it worthwhile for these employees so they can see their reviews, hopefully work through professional development, work through improvement in the subsequent years.
All right, now how do you guarantee then amongst management that who would be policing a particular management employee from influencing the employee's performance? I mean, how are you going to implement something that would challenge or at least refute a management employee from having a personal vendetta against someone?
We currently have a human resources consultant who's established similar programs, mostly in the private sector. And I think we're going to rely on that HR consultant to be that gatekeeper with the management, especially as we roll this out. And there's going to be times when we're going to have to maybe pause and make sure that we're doing it clean, we're doing it transparent. But as of now, we're going to rely on that HR consultant and her expertise to act as the gatekeeper.
If I could just follow up on that, you can look at New York State. They have a lot of these evaluations and performance programs at the statewide level. From management's perspective, it is probably better to have a review process that brings in the union on a 3-person panel or something like that to ensure fairness, which is essentially what's happening on all of the performance review processes that the state major unions use. So I just suggest that you look at that. This is fundamentally, I think, different than a private sector at-will employees. So I would be very concerned's too big a word, but to have someone who's only had private sector HR work, it may lead you into a difficult place. The other thing that I think would be important, and again, to protect management as much as the employee, is to have a performance program that's written, that has goals that are actually measurable and attainable, and then to have both sides sign off on it. Not necessarily that you agree on everything, but that at least everybody's had the right to see it and to add things to it, because if someone gives individuals something that's not doable and then evaluates them later on something that wasn't appropriate, management's going to have just as big a problem as the employee is here. And the final appeals process, basically under public sector labor law, ends up sending it to the Department of Labor or to EEOC at some point. And we'd rather, I'm assuming we'd rather not do any of those things and be able to set up a process that saves you all of those efforts, which can make contentious labor management meetings.
No, those are great points. I will definitely going to take a look at some sort of review process. This is very helpful. Thank you.
I'd only state my agreement. That was why I asked the question in the first place. It seems to me, based on my experience, at least as formerly being dean of the University of Buffalo Law School, these things are not seamless. There are plenty of opportunities for conflicts, good faith and bad faith, about the quality of the oversight. So I think if you want it to work, you probably ought to seriously consider some sort of an appeals process. Otherwise, it looks unfair, to be honest, because it is quite subjective. No matter, you can write down a lot of seemingly objective goals, but ultimately when you're evaluating performance, it's rarely objective. And that leaves so much room for misunderstandings or worse. So to avoid that, particularly if you're trying to set out a kind of a model for the other agencies, I would seriously consider some sort of appeal. I know it slows things down, it's a little more expensive, but it also grants some certainty and authority to people who are otherwise largely without it, namely the workers who are being evaluated by their supervisors.
Very true. Very true. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want, hello everybody, this is Tracy Cooley. I just wanted to also reiterate, I've had a lot of experience, yes, private sector with performance management as a manager, and part of it was always allowing the employees to performance manage themselves in terms of, here's the form, tell us where you think you score in all these areas, and then compare it to what the manager is thinking they score. So then whatever large discrepancy, say somebody's they score themselves a 4, greatest worker there is in that area, and manager scores a 1, clearly there's a disconnect in that area, but that helps with that check and balance, whatever that final review is, to say, well, the employee thinks they're great, the manager thinks they're not, we need to look at this. Clearly there's a disconnect. So I think that will help in that process, as well as it's not just the manager who will evaluate. Yes, it's at our sole discretion, but taking into consideration, how does this employee perceive themselves in these areas as well, to be able to see how those align as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'd suggest that without some sort of an appeal process, if it's ultimately an opaque decision that's made by one person after theoretically considering the employee's side, you're going to run into problems, I think. It still sounds opaque to me, and it sounds fairly subjective to me still. So there's nothing wrong with subjective standards, but they need to have some sort of oversight if they're going to be fair, seems to me at least. Anything else? Okay, hearing no further questions, may I have a motion to approve the
So moved.
BFSA report as discussed, and to approve the modified financial plan as submitted by the mayor?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion or further questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. This concludes the business portion of our meeting as included in the agenda. I'd like to recognize Director Stan Filippo with new business matters to discuss.
What?
The PFM contract.
Oh, I just want to express a negative vote on the PFM contract.
Okay, you want to expand further, or is that sufficient?
That's sufficient enough. I just want to be on the record as being against the renewal of that contract.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'd like to open the floor to the public to comment on any of the items addressed today. Okay, is there a public?
Just
Okay, hearing none, this concludes this meeting of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second by acclamation. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.